Will democracy survive in the next couple of years?
And essentially, we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center in Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Firefly Credit Union, with locations throughout the Twin Cities, has proudly served Minnesotans since 1925. Firefly guides its members forward by delivering customized financial solutions to improve their lives in all aspects of banking. Firefly Credit Union, they light the way with life illuminated. Edina Eye, Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years. Now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services for dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns by Zoom, a Zoom interview, a virtual interview with a longtime guest, Senator Jim Carlson of the 51st Senate District. And Alan Miller with you. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but there's little doubt about it. And once again, a shout out and a thank you to certainly the technical people at Eagan TV who have made this possible. And I forgot in our earlier interviews today with Judge Anderson and Professor Painter to mention the real heroes of this coronavirus and the fact that we have a terrible food shortage. So I just want to give mention to Second Harvest Heartland and to Feed America. Go online and to either of those, and by all means, be generous as you can, because I never thought I'd see the day when we had food lines in this country the way we've had here, because of the ineptitude of our administration and really the viciousness of our administration. But that's got nothing to do with Senator Carlson, who is running for re-election this year. And we'll say, welcome back, Jim.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. It's my pleasure to be on here with you.
And, you know, Judge Anderson's been on so many times that he's writing a book about it. And I think you probably are the only person who maybe have been on more than he.
I don't know, but I'm bookless.
As long as you're not shiftless.
Yeah.
So have you been working from home or have you been working from the Capitol?
I've been working from home. I've been up to the Capitol a couple of times, but that is not a place for a person that has that's our age and maybe has some pre-existing conditions, and even, you know, there's too many opportunities for problems there, and I have to stay healthy so I can continue to serve in the Senate.
Absolutely. And both of my earlier interviews today by Zoom, and an interesting experience it is, we talked about gratuitously with Professor Painter and specifically with Judge Anderson, the good job that we all feel is being done by our Governor Walz, and his consideration of people, his consideration of jobs, his consideration of the seriousness of the predicament that we're in. I'm just very impressed by the job that he has done. So maybe you want to comment on that as we kick this off.
Well, I think you have a very good point there, and it's something that has gone beyond what should be recognized. The I can count, well, I guess I can't count the number of emails I get for people who say that the governor is a dictator, that this shutdown wasn't necessary, all sorts of misinformed people who are thinking they forget that we have followed the governor's instructions. We have followed the instructions of the experts. And that's one of the reasons why we have had such a low death rate and low infection rate, is that Minnesotans are staying home. You've stayed home. I've stayed home. Lots of people are staying home. And that's actually what has made it so effective that we're ahead of other states and other hotspots, and we have not transmitted the virus to each other as much. And if we break this open, we've had people that say that, oh yes, we should have sports back, we should have school go back into session, we should have the bars and restaurants open. All that will do is start a new peak. And being able to avoid this peak has solely been the accomplishment of the governor.
And the fact of the matter is, in this country, we hit 50,000 dead today. In fact, a little bit exceeded that, exceeded what we lost in the entire Vietnam War, which is beyond belief. And, you know, when you look back as to the warnings that we had and the warnings that were ignored by the Trump administration, how many of those lives might have been saved? How many, if we had implemented some of the safety practices that have been advocated not by the politicians, but by the experts? And we have one of the best in the country right here in Dr. Osterholm from the U, who has been, you know, on national television repeatedly, as have been Dr. Fauci, who's not a Minnesotan. But again, these are the people that we should be listening to. And unless you're ready to inject into your veins sterilizers or something like that, which that was the president, one of his two suggestions yesterday. Take some of these procedures, and I understand somebody went on, I think it was Clorox, immediately went on television and said to people, don't put Clorox into your body, either by ingesting it or by putting it in your veins.
Yes.
It will kill you. And his other suggestion of subjecting yourself to ultraviolet light, a very strong ultraviolet light, and that will make the virus go away, which is absolute poppycock. It's just absurd.
It's actually worse than that. It's dangerous. The business of, there are some people that are actually going to try it. It's just like what happened when the president started talking about the quinine bill, or the quinine medication. People went out and bought it, and they started using it, and they should.
Several died.
Yeah, and so when he said that, you know, maybe we should inject some sanitizers, maybe, you know, all of these suggestions, there are people that think that he's God, and they will go out and try it, no matter who comes up and said, don't try it. And that's a real problem. The ultraviolet, now there's, one of the technical parts of it is that there's ultraviolet A, B, and C. And the C is what will kill organisms. And that you can't even get unless you have a license to handle it. It's like radioactive materials. It will kill you quickly. And so you don't want to mess with that kind of ultraviolet. The A and the B, those come from sunshine. It's not a big deal.
You would think that people by now would be onto the fact that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't read. He watches only Fox News, basically. In the mornings, I understand he watches a little bit of everything just so he can get his blood boiling. But he watches Fox News. And of course, that quinine or whatever that was, he got from Fox News. Well, he's still talking about it. They've at least shut up and not used it anymore, because they realize perhaps they could be liable. He's not going to be liable, but some of those people like Tucker Carlson and Hannity and Laura Ingraham, all of whom they follow what they're given in the mornings. I think they're given a sheet. This is what you should really emphasize today. The same as the emails that you're getting. They fall into a pattern, and they represent a very small minority of our Minnesotans.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, they're now being traced back to a small number of people, in fact, that are using those emails, or those there's blogs, or there's news sites that are trying to incite the anger of people. People are frustrated and they want to do something. And what these folks are trying to do is incite them to go up to the Capitol, incite them to go demonstrate in front of the governor's house, all of those kinds of things. It's really, it's misinformation, and it's actually dangerous.
When you have 100 or 200 people out of about 5 million, what does that say, really? They get publicity, but the kind of publicity they get just points out how absurd and bizarre and dangerous they are.
Yeah, well, I've actually taken the new position to recommend that people watch the president, because if they watch the president, even I think people who used to tend to agree with him will now really slink down and shed their, shade their eyes, because he's saying such crazy things. And, even the doctors that are on stage with him will disagree with him. And it doesn't seem like he notices that they're disagreeing with him, unless they come right out and refuse to confirm something he said. Then he'll fire him.
He's in his alternate reality. So what can you do?
Yeah.
Now, with it all, the legislature has managed to get some things done through this. Yes. One of the big things, although watered down a little bit, was the Alex Smith Insulin Act, which at least made it easier for people. People don't have to die because they can't get insulin, they can't pay the price. Is there anything else that's really been going on that we should know about and that you people are working on, in addition to, say, mail-in voting?
Oh, there are a lot of small things, and I would say that we've been funding some different issues. We did pass $300 million worth of aid for people that are shut-ins. That there has to be some matching funds for Medicaid and a few other things like that. So we passed some bills that really will help. But as far as anything really significant, it has not. It has kind of come to a stop after we realized that the economy is going in the tank. And so right now the governor is working on a supplemental budget. And I'm trying to remember the term that the Commissioner of Management and Budget used, but he said that the past budget is unworkable now. So that's what we have to work with, is a new budget. And what we will need to do is have a new forecast, because that is required before we can dig into the reserve funds that we have put together in the last few years. So there's a lot of work there, but it's not really visible to the public. And then when we talk about our election issue, the voting issue, we do have a bill. And in fact, that's what I was writing about just before I came on screen here. And I have a copy of what it's going to be like right here. And what it does not include is universal mail-in balloting. Because that is a problem.
It's really a shame.
Yeah, that is.
The Republicans don't want people to be able to mail in anybody, although just about anybody can get an absentee ballot and mail it in. So there is an outlet there. But the fact of the matter is, and I discussed this earlier, between the gerrymandering and wanting to keep people away from the polls, and poll taxes down south, and all the gimmicks that they have come up with, such as was foisted on the voters in Wisconsin at the primary, and where more than a dozen of them are now dead because they exercised their franchise. Talk about something that's really, really unpardonable and unconscionable. You've got it right there.
Yeah. Well, a couple of the problems we're trying to overcome that were obvious in Wisconsin, we did know before voting day, before the primary day, that they had some huge number of election judges that called in and said, I quit, I'm not going in. So that's why, for instance, in Milwaukee, and I'm not sure if that was a district or just what it was, there was going to be 108 precincts to vote. And so many people quit or said that they were not going to be able to come in, that they went from 108 down to 5. So they had to jam all of these people into that small number of precincts. And the lines, of course, everyone wanted to have people have a social distance. So the lines went around blocks and blocks and blocks. And it was raining too. So it was really miserable to go out and vote. And that's what we're trying to overcome. And I need to say one more thing about absentee ballots. There were a lot of people that wanted to vote absentee in Wisconsin, but their system was overwhelmed. And so they didn't get their ballot, and that's a shame too. And that's something that we're trying to make sure that we can overcome if we do try to go to absentee ballots. Now you have to remember, and this is really important for you and your viewers, is that registering to get an absentee ballot starts on May 13th. So May 13th, you can send in a request for an absentee ballot. Now it won't come until the ballots are printed, until it's time to start voting, but you can get on the early list. And the important thing is that all of these, there's 87 counties in the state, and these people that work on sending out the absentee ballots and validating the requests for those ballots, they have to start right away on May 13th or 14th. They have to start processing those. And we're expecting that there's going to be at least 250,000, maybe more. There were about somewhere around 150,000 absentee ballots in the last election. And what we're saying is that it'll probably double or more. And
I think it'll quadruple.
It very likely could, yes. Yeah, now you have to also remember that 1,000 precincts in Minnesota already vote mail-in voting. So the voters there don't have a choice. They get a ballot in the mail because they can't go in and vote unless they actually have to go in. Then they go into their county seat and vote there. But they do not have precinct voting polls like we are used to here.
Now, is that because it's a choice of the county?
Well, it's a little bit of each. It's reserved to only those precincts that have 400 or less registered voters. 400 or less. And we were trying to get that changed. I have a bill to, well, let me back up a little bit. There are 7 counties that you can't do that. They're the metropolitan counties. Dakota County is one of them. And I have a bill to allow Dakota County to also use that for their precincts that are that are 400 or less registered voters. I have another bill that increases that 400 across the state to 1,000. So that would be another absentee ballot expansion. Now that is not, fully mail-in, but that's another bill that we have on the shelves here. And we know that would never be accepted in 2020. So that's going to be one that's going to be an early introduction in 2021.
But the problem there is that we still have a 1-vote majority in the Senate, which really a 2-vote majority in the Senate. Sorry about that. That can stop a lot of this progressive legislation from going through. The House is controlled by Democrats. The Senate is controlled by people in horse and buggy and the gazelkas of the world. And it really is so counterproductive to all the modern techniques that are available and it's just self-serving, and it really flies in the face of everything that representative government stands for.
Yeah. Well, we have a problem here, our perception too. The president stands behind the podium and said that mail-in balloting is fraught with fraud. He opposes it. We need voter ID.
Except
Okay,
his.
pardon me?
Except his.
Except his, yes. But when the president says so, it's just like what we were talking about before. If the president says that mail-in balloting is fraught with fraud, the people that believe every word he says now repeat that to me and to others. And that's just flat out not true. So that's our biggest hurdle right now, is the leader of that party has said it's fraught with fraud. So you go down the line on people who are elected to represent that party, they have to oppose it. So that's where we're sitting right now, is they have to oppose mail-in balloting. And so they are. And they won't even listen to it. They won't hear it. They won't vote for it. And like you said before, they have a 2-vote majority in the Senate, so it will never get through the Senate. But there are other things we can do. Expanding absentee balloting is one of them. And there is this bill that I have here that has been negotiated with the Secretary of State and the House Republicans, and the Senate Republicans kind of off camera. They will say, we have to do something. And so we're trying to get something included there, but it will not be mail-in balloting. And maybe just to go back over some of the things that we do need to work on. One of them is that a lot of precincts around Minnesota they vote in senior homes. And now what safety things can you think of that are a problem when you send a bunch of people into senior homes to vote? So what we want to do is make sure that,
especially with the statistics that we have now about senior homes.
Exactly, yes. So we have this bill that has several elements in it to move those precincts out of there, to allow like nurses and staff in senior homes to allow people to help people vote absentee, to allow, and like you say, we need a little extra time to count all these absentee ballots. So this bill has a provision in it to expand the counting time. A lot of people don't know that they actually start to count the ballots on the week before the election day. Well, we would expand that to 2 weeks before the election day. Today, there is actually a provision to allow any precinct to count 24 hours after the polls close. And so we have a day that they can make up for slow counting. Well, we're increasing that to 3 days. So that'll allow precincts and counties to count ballots until 3 days after election day. And the counties are saying they absolutely need that. Especially because people send in their absentee ballots the last day or two before election day, right, and you just get this glut of ballots. And then there's also the HAVA funds, the Help America Vote Act funds. And what those funds need to have is a matching contribution for the state to be able to spend them. And they need an appropriation. That's a bill that releases those funds for the Secretary of State to use them. That's in this bill as well. Now, what they're going to be used for, and what they've actually said that these HAVA funds should be used for, is to sanitize the precincts. So it'll be used to make the separation distance, social separation, and also to be able to sanitize and do other things that make voting safer. So the funds are in there.
Don't inject the sanitizer into your body.
No. Well, I did have a conversation with a friend this morning, and he asked what the dilution rate should be of Lysol. And I said, try full strength first. So yes, so we're doing that. And now I'm not sure when you're going to air this interview, but this is hot right now, this weekend. And on Monday, we should have some new news on this particular bill. But there are things that are being worked on, and they're being worked on bipartisanly. And so it's a matter of how do we make sure that people are not embarrassed for their vote in the Senate, because again, with that 2-vote margin, we have to respect their feelings. And how do we get all of these things passed? And we do know that the chair of the State Government and Elections Committee, and that's Mary Kiffmeyer, has indicated that she wants to do some things. So that's what we're using as our justification to come back and try to get this passed. And I think we will.
She wants to keep people home and keep them from voting, if her history means anything. And maybe Josh can tell us how fast that we'll go live onto Egan TV and as well as YouTube, because we're experimenting here with a new medium, and I don't know how fast it can be done. They have been marvelous in being able to enable us to conduct an interview like this. And I don't know, Josh, I know you're there. If you want to venture a guess, pop on to the screen, and if not,
probably next week it'll be up.
Well, that's good. That's wonderful. I don't know how you do it, but
very good.
You guys are amazing.
Alan, I have to tell you something that is one of my biggest frustrations right now, and that is the conversation between masks and respirators. They are not the same. They are vastly different. And in fact, at 3M, they're made by different divisions, because a mask is actually a medical product and a respirator is an industrial product. And this, let's see if I can get that right. This is a respirator. This is a respirator that is actually made in England. This is made on a machine that I was the American engineer on it. And
really?
This is made in a machine that is blindingly fast. It was designed and built under a secret agreement that we had, and it has been secret for more than 10 years. So, and this is one of the respirators that came off of the acceptance run that we did back in, I think it was late 1999. Here is another respirator, and this is one that's made in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And you can see that it says 3M on the outside, and there's a little plastic.
P95. We have a couple of P95s.
And P95s are good too. Yep. Yeah, the 95 is the filtration rating. The P or the N is what kinds of atmospheres it can be used in. N means no oil. That's all it means, no oil. And P means it's a particulate respirator. So when you find something that says an N95 or a P95 or even a KN95, those are the certifications from a government. So these have to be made with a certain performance, and they even have to be tested, routinely sample tested, to make sure that they pass those tests. Now this particular one is quite a fancy respirator because it has a rubber bladder on the inside that seals against the face. And that's what's important, is to have something that seals against the face. These are primarily to protect the wearer. The masks are to protect the patient and the wearer. The wearer, not so much the patient, quite a bit, because that keeps the spittle and all of those kinds of things from going out into the air while you're talking or sneezing or anything like that. So those are masks. These are respirators. So that's an important distinction.
And it's a distinction that we're going to have to end on, because we have reached, as usual,
Always
our
so fast.
time, and we have so much more to cover. I wanted to talk about marriage licenses and wills and things like that, and give a little bit more shout out to the heroes. But I will say in closing, Feed America, go online. Second Harvest, Heartland, go online and give them whatever you can, because desperately it's needed now. We have, and I hope you all have. Jim, thank you so much. Senator Jim Carlson, District 51, and we'll be with you whenever we can zoom back.
Thank you very much, Alan. Be sure to apply for your absentee ballot.
Will do.